What's up, Guardians, and welcome back, Titans. I'm Profane, thanks for checking out the video. We've looked at quite a few new builds over the past few weeks, and today we're going to be checking out one that will be perfect for soloing anything in Edge of Fate, even Mythic Keplar Missions. So if you've been struggling to find a reliable build in this new expansion, then I suggest you give the Crest of Alpha Lupi a try. I had my skepticisms at first, and I doubted in this exotic's ability to provide consistent healing, but I've been more than impressed with the performance of this exotic, as it's gotten me through a lot of tough spots here in Edge of Fate. The Crest of Alpha Lupi plays off of the use of our class ability, and it provides a burst of healing whenever we place a barricade, or activate our thrusters. When casting a barricade, this will restore 80 points of HP, and it'll add on an overshield valued at 75 points. Allies that are within 12 meters of our barricade placement will receive these benefits as well, and will gain a small amount of class energy whenever teammates receive that healing. So if we do have allies nearby, we can expect to see a noticeable uptick in our barricade uptime, but even when we're solo, we're going to have that energy back incredibly fast. Not only do we receive healing bonuses when casting our barricade, but when dealing sustained damage from behind our barricade, we will create periodic bursts of healing, which provide a total of 30 HP. And what's nice about this is that it does not require us to defeat an enemy. We simply need to apply sustained weapon damage, which means to have success with this exotic, all we need to do is pop our barricade as often as we can, and stay behind it while we rip through enemies with our weapons. And before we factor in any fragments, aspects, and artifact bonuses, we're already able to give ourselves an abundant source of healing, making it that much harder for our enemies to bring us down, and making it that much more likely for us to get through some of those tough mythic missions. This is an agnostic exotic, so it'll work on any subclass, but I found it to pair up really well on Arc, and a big reason for that is Storm's Keep. With all the bolt charges that we'll be able to create, we'll have a much easier time taking down enemies. Regardless of what subclass you decide to use, it's going to be important for you to focus the majority of your character stats towards class ability and weapons. In this new armor system, we don't need to worry about our health stat, but by devoting at least 100 points towards our class stat, we would have the shortest possible cooldown time of our barricade, and we would increase any source of class energy gains by 190%. So if we had a weapon with Strategist, it would normally provide 20% bonus energy, but at 190% bonus, it's going to give us 38% instead. If we push our class stats beyond 100, we will give ourselves an overshield whenever casting our barricade, but we're already doing that with our exotic, so this isn't as beneficial for us, and that gives us the opportunity to invest stats towards our weapons, and maybe even our super. With my own build, I was able to get my weapon and class stat over 100, which left me open to use super font mods on my helmet, so that I could bring my low super stat up whenever I've got armor charges active, and that also freed me up to be able to use weapon surge mods. We'll come back around and talk about armor more here shortly, but before we lose ourselves in a rabbit hole, let's talk about the rest of our subclass. We'll be pairing Storm's Keep with Knockout. We could go with Touch of Thunder to be able to improve the performance of our grenades, but Knockout gives us a way to instantly restore our health when defeating enemies with our melee. Sitting behind our barricade might keep us safe from anything that's far away, but there's always going to be a few stragglers that like to sneak up on you, and that's when you're going to need Knockout. Knockout also causes us to become amplified, which improves our weapon handling and reload speed, but it also provides us with a 15% bonus in damage resistance. We're going to increase that resistance with the Spark of Resistance fragment, which will give us an additional 25% damage resistance whenever we are surrounded. When it comes to the rest of our fragments, our main focus is to produce bolt charges and to create as many ionic traces as we can. We're using Spark of Ions, which will create ionic traces for us whenever we defeat enemies with bolt charges, but this also creates those when we defeat jolted enemies. Ionic traces are really going to come in handy, as these provide 15% bonus grenade, melee, and class energy. We don't have any built-in methods of casting Jolt, but we could use arc weapons that come with jolting feedback, or Volt Shot, but with how many bolt charges we'll be setting off, it's not going to be as necessary. And a big reason to that is that there is a cooldown on how often ionic traces can be created. But if we were to be using the Elemental Coalescence artifact mod, we would create additional ionic traces as we rapidly defeat enemies, which means more ability energy. We are using Spark of Frequency, because when we are amplified, we'll gain one additional stack of bolt charge every time one gets applied. This also increases our reload speed and weapon stability after landing melee hits. We could apply Jolt with the use of Spark of Shock, which would give our grenades the ability to jolt enemies. We are using Flashbang grenades because of their ability to blind enemies and stun unstoppable champs, so having the added ability to jolt would be a great benefit. But the final fragment that we're using with this build is Spark of Discharge, and this will give us 2 advantages. When we defeat enemies with arc weapons, we have a chance of creating ionic traces, and when we collect ionic traces, we'll add on 1 stack of bolt charge. But since we are using Spark of Frequency, that's going to give us 2 stacks, as long as we're amplified. And if we're making double the amount of ionic traces because of elemental coalescence, then we'll be getting a lot more energy for our barricades. There's a few other artifact mods that you might want to consider using with this build. Elemental Days will be a great asset to have whenever champions are present, but if there's no champions, then there's absolutely no need for the mod. This creates an elemental matching explosion whenever champions are stunned, and it creates an elemental debuff that lingers for 8 seconds. So if we stunned a champion with arc, they would be jolted, but you should be aware that this will not work with kinetic weapons. Elemental Overdrive would also be a great option, as this would provide a 10% bonus to arc weapon damage after we've collected an ionic trace. If we incorporate solar weapons into our loadout, then we'd be able to open ourselves up to have Radiance. By landing consecutive precision shots with a solar weapon, we would trigger Radiance by using the Fever and Chill mod, providing our weapons with a 20% bonus in damage. And in addition to that, if we landed consecutive shots with stasis weapons, we would gain stacks of frost armor. But I find much more value out of having solar weapons giving us Radiance. When it comes to weapons, solar weapons would be an obvious great choice, and those with heal clip would be really nice to have. Arc weapons with Rolling Storm would help us build up bolt charges even faster, and like we stated before, having Volt Shot or Jolting Feedback would be great. We're pretty much open to use just about any exotic weapon that we could possibly want with this build, and there's some obvious powerhouses like the Thunderlord, Centrifuge, or Graviton Lance. But there's also some powerful synergy to be had in the Outbreak Perfected, the Kvostov, the Wither Horde, and even the kinetic version of the Quicksilver Storm. By running at least a 2 set of TechSec armor, we would give kinetic weapons a 200% bonus against any overshield, vehicle, and construct. And with a 4 set bonus, we would also create concussive blasts, which will disorient enemies, so there's going to be a lot of advantages in running a kinetic weapon. For survivability's sake, I would recommend to consider running a 2 set of TechSec armor with a 2 set of Bushido armor. This armor set provides 30 points of health whenever defeating enemies with a freshly drawn weapon. It might not be a lot, but it can certainly come in handy, and it will further add to this build's overall capabilities when it comes to successfully soloing content here in Edge of Fate. To increase the uptime of our barricade, we will want to consider using armor mods like Focusing Strike and Bolstering Detonation. There's also the Insulation Boots mod, which would provide bonus class energy when collecting orbs. And with all the barricades that will be popping, we'd be able to improve the uptime of our super by using the Dynamo Helmet mod. It might not be a flashy build, like the Wish Dragon Strained build, or a Prismatic Consecration, but there's a lot of power behind those bolt charges, and with improved weapon damage and constant sources of healing, there's nothing that's going to stop us, not even Mythic Keplar. So if you've been looking for a reliable build here in Edge of Fate, then look no further than the Crest of Alpha Lupi. That's going to wrap things up for today's video, but I wish you all the best of luck throughout your journeys. Let me know your thoughts about the Crest of Alpha Lupi and what your favorite builds have been so far. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel, and so does being a member, so a big shout out and thank you to all of our channel members. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.